London Eye, please.
Yeah, okay, mate.
That's great.
We're in.
Joe, we've looked at a lot of questions today, but I think the questions that we're going to look at now are probably the biggest stumbling block for most people in believing in God. And that's the whole issue and the complex issues regarding suffering and evil. And I suppose the first question to ask is this: how can a loving God allow so much suffering in the world?
Well, it's a crucial question, because every single belief system, every worldview, not just Christianity, has to offer an answer to this question.
Yes.
It's a question about morality. It's a question about justice, essentially. Some people would say it's a moral complaint against God. How do the different worldviews face and deal with the question of suffering? We've said there are only 3 worldviews, and those 3 actually reduced to 2. But let's go with the 3 for a moment.
Okay.
Naturalism. The
Which
universe
means?
is just matter in motion. All of reality is in flux. We're just atomic accidents, random chance. There is pantheism, which means that all is one, one is all. There is no distinctions. It's all an illusion. And then there is theism. Specifically, we're talking about Christian theism. Now, when the pantheist, for example, expressed in Buddhism, looks at the question of suffering, what do they conclude? Well, the pantheist concludes that all suffering, all distinctions between good and evil are maya. They are an illusion. It's all an illusion.
They don't actually exist?
That's quite right. They don't actually exist. So what we see is all an illusion. It's all one. All of reality is one. So there are no distinctions between good and evil, right and wrong, suffering or pleasure. It's all those are essentially the human problem, because we are apparently caught up with our desires with respect to the world in which we find ourselves. But that world is an illusion, and until we realize the truth of that illusion and free ourselves from our desires to say not suffer, we can never find that oneness with that impersonal oneness, that final nirvana that we seek. So to care for somebody within a pantheistic worldview is absurd. The other worldview which tries to face the problem is naturalism. Now, naturalism, because it doesn't believe that there are ultimate moral categories of good and evil, because it's just matter in motion, it's all chaos, in one sense, what are we complaining about? There is no complaint to be made. As Richard Dawkins argues, at least at this point consistently, that in a world of so-called selfish genes, there isn't any justice, good and evil, or injustice. It's just blind, pitiless indifference. In other words, matter in motion doesn't have a conscience. Matter in motion is just matter in motion. It's just chaos. Everything is in flux. It's just atomic energy bouncing around. In the end, there is no ultimate meaning in any of it. Therefore, there's no ultimate moral
Joe, how does
categories.
that answer the question of suffering? At the end of the day, God is all-powerful. He allows suffering to continue.
Sure. Well, I'm coming to that now. The Christian worldview faces the issue of suffering head-on. That is, it is prepared, first of all, to define good and evil. It's prepared to recognize that it's not an illusion, and it does actually exist in an absolute sense.
It does.
Now, we have to ask ourselves, what must be assumed as true in order for a question about good and evil, about suffering, to be meaningful? What are we already assuming when we ask the question, why does God allow evil in the world? Or why does God allow suffering in the world, if there is such a God?